$16,200. That was the annual salary of the first officer flying a passenger airline over New York State in February of 2009. She'd moonlighted in a coffee shop to make ends meet. That night, her aircraft went down outside Buffalo, killing 50 people. And what happened next didn't just change aviation safety. It quietly rebuilt the entire economics of becoming a pilot in America. Because today, that same entry-level job pays around $100,000. And a senior captain at a major airline earns close to $500,000. The reason for that transformation is a single rule. A rule that, by the numbers, wouldn't even have prevented the crash that created it. That's the story of this video. And if you're thinking about the cockpit yourself, it's also the story of the strangest income timeline in the American labor market. Here's the rule. Before 2013, an airline could hire a first officer with as little as 250 flight hours. After the Buffalo crash, Colgan Air Flight 3407, Congress mandated that every airline pilot hold an airline transport pilot certificate. 1,500 hours. 6 times the old minimum overnight. Now, here's the part that stops people cold. Both pilots on that flight already had over 2,000 hours each. Both would have easily qualified under the new rule. Investigators traced the crash to an improper response to a stall warning, with fatigue as a contributing factor and not to a lack of logged hours. The rule written in response to the tragedy would not have prevented the tragedy, but it did something nobody fully intended. It made new airline pilots 6 times more expensive to produce and dramatically scarcer. And when you make something scarce, its price goes up. Within a few years of the rule taking effect, median regional first officer pay had roughly tripled. One aviation writer called it the most awful way imaginable to negotiate a pay raise. 50 people died, Congress reacted, and the accidental side effect was the largest wage transformation in the profession's modern history. So that's a trapdoor at the heart of this career. 1,500 hours stand between every new pilot and their first airline paycheck. Everything else in this video, the debt, the poverty years, the eventual payoff, flows from that single number. Start with what it costs to even reach the starting line. An accelerated flight academy, the fastest civilian route through all the required licenses, runs roughly $90,000 to $130,000 from zero experience to airline ready. The slower, self-paced route at a local flight school comes in somewhat lower. A 4-year university aviation degree, Embry-Riddle, North Dakota, Purdue, can reach $180,000 to $240,000 once tuition and flight fees combined. Though those programs earn one real advantage, graduates qualify for a restricted airline certificate at 1,000 hours instead of 1,500. You are, quite literally, paying extra to shrink the trapdoor. There's exactly one free path, the military, and it's free the way things are free when you pay with 8 to 10 years of your life. And here's the financial detail almost nobody warns students about. Flight training often doesn't qualify for the federal loan programs that cover a law or medical degree. So students borrow from private lenders at higher rates with less flexible repayment. The debt is the size of a professional degree. The borrowing terms usually aren't. Now, a freshly certified commercial pilot walks out of that training with roughly 250 hours. The airlines require 1,500. So how do you cross a 1,200-hour gap when every hour of flying costs money? You get someone else to pay for it, which, for most new pilots, means becoming a flight instructor, teaching the next wave of students in the same small trainers they just graduated from. This is the time-building phase. 1 to 2 years, sometimes longer, at flight instructor wages, while a 6-figure loan compounds interest in the background. It is functionally a legally mandated apprenticeship, except the apprentice paid $100,000 for the privilege, and the license at the end is only permission to apply for the real job. And when the airline job finally comes, the entire profession turns out to be governed by one word: seniority. Not skill, not total experience. Seniority. The date you were hired at your specific airline. It determines your pay, your schedule, your aircraft, your vacation, which city you're based in, and whether you survive a downturn. A pilot with 10 years at one airline outranks a pilot with 25 years of total flying who joined last month. And here's the brutal part. Seniority does not transfer. Ever. Change airlines for any reason, including your airline going bankrupt underneath you. And you start at the bottom of the new list at probationary pay, regardless of everything you've flown. There are no exceptions. Not for decorated military aviators, not for former astronauts, not for anybody. The pay ladder this system produces looks like this. Regional first officers, the entry point, now start around $90,000 to $115,000, numbers that would have been science fiction 15 years ago when that same seat paid $19,000 to $25,000. Move to a major airline and first officer pay starts above $100,000 and climbs fast. Upgrade to captain and base pay roughly doubles, and at the very top of the ladder, something remarkable happened recently. After a wave of new contracts, a senior wide-body captain at United, American, and Delta now earns the identical top rate, $465.13 per flight hour at all three. That's roughly $465,000 to $520,000 a year before profit sharing and before retirement contributions of 16 to 18% that most American careers can't come close to matching. The government's own statistics put the median airline pilot at around $220,000, not the top earners, the median. So why doesn't everyone do this? Because the risk in this profession is concentrated in three places and all three sit outside the pilot's control. First, the medical certificate. A pilot must pass a medical exam on a recurring basis forever. Fail it for vision changes, a heart condition, certain medications, and the income stops immediately. Some conditions end the career permanently, with the training debt still outstanding. Second, furloughs. Airlines shed pilots in reverse seniority order, which means the newest hires are always the first out the door. And because seniority resets to zero at a new airline, a furlough doesn't just cost a pilot their job, it can cost them their entire position on the ladder they spent years climbing. Third, the hiring cycle itself. Training takes 2 to 4 years, which means every student who starts flight school is betting on what the market looks like when they finish, not when they begin. And that market swings hard. After the pandemic boom, hiring slowed sharply through 2024 and early 2025 as airlines digested their new pilots, then accelerated again into 2026 with major carriers announcing thousands of new positions and one consulting firm projecting the widest gap between pilot supply and demand landing right around now, with more than 16,000 U.S. airline pilots hitting mandatory retirement within 5 years. If you want to know what this profession feels like when the cycle turns against you, there is no better witness than the most famous pilot alive. In January 2009, 1 month before the Buffalo crash, Captain Chesley Sullenberger landed a crippled Airbus on the Hudson River and saved all 155 people aboard. He was instantly a national hero. The following month, he sat before a congressional subcommittee, and what he described wasn't heroism. His pay had been cut roughly 40% over the preceding years. His pension had been terminated in the wave of post-9/11 airline bankruptcies, replaced by a federal guarantee he described as worth pennies on the dollar. He had started a consulting business on the side to make ends meet. His first officer, Jeffrey Skiles, who had just helped him pull off one of the most celebrated landings in aviation history, testified that he'd worked 7 days a week across 2 jobs for 6 years, just to hold on to a middle-class life. And then Sullenberger said the sentence that summarized an entire era of this profession. He did not know a single professional airline pilot who wanted their children to follow in their footsteps. That was 2009, the most celebrated pilot in America, working a second job. 16 years later, the same industry pays senior captains $500,000 and can't hire fast enough. Nothing about the airplanes changed. The supply of pilots did. So, 2 pilots, same license, same skill. Here's how differently this can go. The good scenario. You finish training efficiently. You instruct for a year, not 3, because the hiring market is hot and regionals are offering signing bonuses in the tens of thousands. You reach a major airline in your late 20s. Your seniority number locks in early and you ride it for 3 decades. Upgrading to captain on schedule, never furloughed, medical intact. You retire at 65 as a senior wide-body captain, having earned more in your final decade than most professionals earn in a career, without ever once updating a resume. The bad scenario. You finish training into a hiring freeze. Your instructing years stretch to 3, then 4, while interest compounds on a $100,000 private loan. You finally get hired 18 months before a downturn and get furloughed as the most junior name on the list. When you restart at another airline, your seniority number resets to 0, and every rung of the ladder starts over. Same license, same hours, same hands on the controls. A decade later, you're earning half of what a classmate earns, permanently behind for one reason only: the year you happen to finish training. In most careers, timing is a factor. In this one, timing is nearly everything because the seniority system converts your hire date into a number that follows you for 30 years. Becoming a pilot looks like a straight climb. Train, get hired, get promoted. From the inside, it's a $100,000 bet on a hiring cycle you can't see from the starting line. Years of deliberately scarce, underpaid experience building, followed by a payoff that now ranks among the largest in American labor. And the strangest part is where that payoff came from. It traces in real measure back to a February night outside Buffalo, and to a first officer earning $16,200 a year, whose death forced an industry to finally put a price on the people flying the plane. The stripes are real. The $500,000 seat is real, but it was priced by a tragedy, rationed by a rule, and it goes, always, to whoever arrived first.